Let's call this segment authors that I would like to read. Um, Boy, there's so many books and so little time. You know, that's the thing. So many books, so little time. So, with that in mind, um, um, I just stumbled upon reading an article, um, and the name Marcel Proust came up. And he's and sometimes a name pops up and I've got to say, well, I got to look this guy up. He's just so interesting. So I looked up Marcel Proust, and he lived till he was 51 and a half years old. He was a French novelist and critic, and essayist, best known for his monumental "À la recherche du temps perdu." It was published in 7 parts between 1913 and 1927. So he was very alive in the 20s. He was one of the you got to read if you're like in the intellectual New York City crowd or in the Paris crowd or whatever. You have to read this guy, right? Proust was born in the southern sector of Paris, then rustic, the 16th arrondissement, at the home of his great uncle 2 months after the Treaty of Frankfurt formally ended the Franco-Prussian War. His birth took place during the violence that surrounded the suppression of the Paris Commune, and his childhood corresponded with the consolidation of the French Third Republic, much In Search of Lost Time. This is one of his novels. In Search of Lost Time concerns the vast changes, most particularly the decline of the aristocracy and the rise of middle classes that occurred in France during the Third Republic. Proust's father, Achille Proust, was a prominent pathologist and epidemiologist responsible for studying and attempting to remedy the causes and movements of cholera through Europe and Asia. He was the author of many articles and books on medicine and hygiene. Proust's mother, Jean Weil, was the daughter of a rich and cultured Jewish family. She was literate and well-read. Her letters demonstrate a well-developed sense of humor. So it's cool when somebody has a well-developed sense of humor. Like my brother would be somebody that has a well-developed sense of humor. And mine is like more of a rough, random kind. So he was baptized in 1871 in the Church of Saint Louis-Antoine, and later confirmed as a Catholic, but never formally practiced that faith. Interesting, huh? So he was a free thinker, and most novelists tend to be free thinkers, I think, even though they, of course, might have hidden the fact back then because they were afraid of being called an atheist, perhaps. I don't know. But despite his poor health, Proust served a year as an enlisted man in the French Army, 1889 to 1890, stationed in the Coligny barracks in Orleans, an experience that provided a lengthy episode in one of his novels, part 3 of his novel, that is, The Germantes Way. As a young man, Proust was dilettante and a social climber whose aspirations as a writer were hampered by his lack of discipline. I can relate to that. Lack of discipline. If only I was more centered, I could write better, right? If I just sat myself down and said, I've got to write 2 hours today. Every day. Every single day. Write 2 hours. And you hear about these authors that write a book every 7 months, like Daniel Steele, the novel machine. I think she's probably more of a novel machine for money, but that's my opinion. Proust had a close relationship with his mother, too. To appease his father, who insisted that he pursue a career, Proust obtained a volunteer position at the Bibliothèque Mazarine in the summer of 1896. After exerting considerable effort, he obtained a sick leave that extended for several years until he was considered to have resigned. He never worked at his job, and he did not move from his parents' apartment until after both were dead. So he was kind of like, George in the Seinfeld episode, with the Penske file. He just, he got a job, but he never really worked there. Carried a file around. And of course, Proust was a closeted homosexual, one of the first European novelists to mention homosexuality openly and at length in the parts of À la recherche du temps perdu. Now, here's an interesting thing too. If you've read anything about E.M. Forster, E.M. Forster really, from what I understand, quit novel writing because, and he was a homosexual as well. He quit novel writing because he was afraid of. I think I have this right. I think he was afraid of the backlash if he wrote more of his personal stuff in his novels. So I think he pretty much quit novel writing. Was it in his 40s? Somebody might be able to correct me on that. But E.M. Forster, maybe that'll be my next type. So a lot of fascinating writers out there. Proust was involved in writing and publishing at an early age in addition to the literary magazines with which he was associated and in which he published while at school. So, Proust, In Search of Lost Time. I'll have to take a look at that. Begun in 1909, À la recherche du temps perdu consists of several volumes totaling around 3,200 pages. Imagine that, featuring more than 2,000 characters. Now, I have trouble enough with keeping track of 20 characters in a book. Imagine 2,000 characters. Graham Greene called Proust the greatest novelist of the 20th century. W. Somerset Maugham called the novel the greatest fiction to date. Proust died before he was able to complete his revision of the drafts and proofs of the final volumes, the last three which were published posthumously and edited by his brother. So his brother actually edited it and helped bring these things to life, which is interesting. The book was translated in English by C.K. Scott Moncrief, appearing under the title Remembrance of Things Past between 1922 and 1931. In 1995, Penguin undertook a fresh translation of the book by editor Christopher Prendergast, 7 translators in 3 countries. So there it is, Marcel Proust, a very interesting person. I'll have to do my next novelist profile. This is becoming a theme here. The novelist profile. Brought to you by Wikipedia. No, I do have to attribute Wikipedia because I use that for broad references. I use other net sources too, but so yeah, maybe E.M. Forster next time, or gosh, who else could I do? My gosh, there's just tons of great. Or I could do poets. I could do Wordsworth, or I could do John Updike profile, Kurt Vonnegut. So a lot of cool stuff out there. So there it is. A little bit on Marcel Proust, and just woke up this morning just thinking of the name Marcel Proust. It's kind of interesting how things come to you.